The Earth's ecosystems support an amazing diversity of species. Approximately 1.7 million species have been identified and named by scientists, and yet quantifying the actual number of species inhabiting the Earth is still an ongoing process. New species are continuously being discovered by scientists. They believe that the actual number of species may be close to 10 million. The diversity of our planet is not static. Over evolutionary time, new species evolve while existing species fade away and become extinct. The diversity of our planet is a story of constant change. In the Philippines, islands are believed to have a very high degree of land and animal endemism. The country hosts more than 52,177 described species, of which more than half is found nowhere else in the world. On a per-unit area basis, the Philippines probably harbors more diversity of life than any other country on the planet. Biological diversity is not the same everywhere on Earth's surface. Distinct geographic patterns of diversity relate to environmental conditions that have influenced the evolution of species as well as the ability of local environments to support a diverse community. As we go on to the video, we will examine these regional and global patterns of Earth's biological diversity, both in time and space. Temporal changes in the local patterns of diversity reflect changes in the local distribution and abundance of species in response to changes in environmental conditions through time. These are influenced by the immigration and emigration of species as they respond to regional and global changes in climate. Speciation and global extinction have also led to dramatic long-term evolutionary changes in patterns of global diversity. Over the past 600 million years, the number of different types of organisms has been increasing. An example of this is the richness of fossilized invertebrates over geologic time. The continuous increase is evident in the graph presented. Plants as well have increased almost continuously, but the groups that dominate the land flora have shifted dramatically through time. The early vascular plants, which are the rootless and leafless coelopsids, went extinct by the end of the Devonian and were replaced by pteridophytes, which flourished during the Carboniferous period. This group then decreased in abundance by the early Triassic. The decline of this group coincided with the diversification of the gymnosperms, which in turn declined in abundance and diversity over the past 100 million years as angiosperms diversified. The general pattern of increasing diversity has also been accompanied by extinctions, which were not timed evenly through Earth's history. Most extinctions are clustered in geologically brief periods of time. The most recent mass extinction occurred during the Cretaceous, which wiped out more than half of all species, including the dinosaurs. The mass extinction event at the end of the Permian resulted in the loss of 96% of all marine species and perhaps as many as 50% of the total species on Earth. Humans have caused more than 75% of these extinctions, primarily through habitat destruction, but also through the introduction of predators and parasites and by explosive hunting and fishing. distinct geographic patterns of species richness. Thus, identified species are not distributed equally across Earth's surface. In general, the number of terrestrial species decreases as one moves away from the equator toward the poles. This pattern is also observed in aquatic environments, both freshwater and marine. Despite the general nature of the species richness, the actual pattern is more complex and often disrupted by other variables relating to topography or climate. When the data are viewed for longitudinal belts relating to different continental masses, a number of significant deviations from the general trend can be seen. In addition, areas of lower density are observed in the subtropical desert regions of both northern, such as the Sahara Desert, and southern Africa, such as the Nanib, Kalahari, and Karo deserts. For groups that are associated with specific environments or resources, deviations from the general latitudinal gradient of species richness are also observed. In Tambopata, Peru, E.O. Wilson once found more species of ant in a single tree than there are of the British Isle. Scientists all over the world observed that more species exist when traveling from the poles to the equator. Why is that so? The increase in species richness or biodiversity that occurs from the poles to the tropics, often referred to as the latitudinal diversity gradient or LDG, is one of the most widely recognized patterns in ecology. Diversity of species starts to decrease as we move from the equator to the poles. Put another way, in the present day, localities at lower latitudes generally have more species than localities at higher latitudes. The LDG has been observed to varying degrees in Earth's past. See, it's not just ants. Other animals like birds, mammals, plants. Earth's most biodiverse places are always in regions like the tropical rainforests. It can be because tropical rainforests are older than temperate rainforests. They have more time to flourish. On average, the tropics are warm and they get plenty of water. The equator gets more solar radiation throughout the year, which means plants and all the animals that live in the tropics get most of the energy. That is why they are more productive. LDG may exist because in temperate regions, the species have no time to specialize and they need to be more adaptable due to the ever-changing climate. Life is simply more stable in the tropics. Here in the Philippines, there is essentially the same hours of day and night no matter what day of the year it is. In relation to this, it might explain why more species coexist near the equator. The tropics are crowded and competition for resources is extreme because the organisms need to specialize. Unlike in the temperate rainforests, the climates and seasons in the tropics do not conflict with this. The most easily interpreted hypothesis proposed to account for global patterns of species diversity are those explicitly relating to the availability of environmental energy or thermal energy associated with environmental features. The relationship between patterns of species richness and several indices of available energy for a number of vertebrate taxa in North America was identified by David Curry. He found a positive relationship between potential evapotranspiration or PET and regional patterns of species richness for mammals, birds, reptiles, and amphibians. PET is defined as the amount of evaporation that would occur if a sufficient water source were available and is an index of integrated thermal energy. Greater energy availability is assumed to enable a greater biomass to be supported. This enables more individual organisms to coexist and thus more species at abundances that enable them to maintain viable populations. This results in an increase in species richness with energy availability. Furthermore, variation in species richness is correlated most strongly with estimates of actual evapotranspiration or AET. AET is the flux of water from the terrestrial surface to the atmosphere through both evaporation and transpiration. It is the function of both the atmospheric demand for water brought about by the input of solar energy to the surface or PET and the supply of water from precipitation, and as such, it includes the constraints imposed by the availability of soil water on transpiration. Environmental conditions favorable for photosynthesis and plant growth support a greater number of plant species. Factors affecting plant growth include exposure to available water and solar energy. So as net primary productivity in the forest increases, plant richness also increases. Aside from plant species, species richness of animals also increases as net productivity and plant richness increase. This is because autotrophs serve as food and habitats for heterotrophs. However, species richness decreases as altitude increases. High elevation communities usually occupy a smaller spatial area than the corresponding lowland communities, and this geographic isolation will result to a potential immigration and extinction of local species. Also, as net productivity in the bodies of water increases, diversity of marine organisms decreases. For example, benthos and neritic and pelagic zones of ocean and the limnetic zone of eutrophic lakes must be able to survive with only limited oxygen available. Alpha diversity is the species diversity only in a local community. On the other hand, beta diversity refers to the species turnover among local communities. As seen in the figures, from east to west in North America, the numbers of the species of trees, birds, and mammals increase. Increasing environmental heterogeneity within a region typically results in a corresponding increase in beta diversity. Lastly, gamma diversity refers to the total species diversity across all communities within a geographic area.